Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for finishing your cake and coming into this session because Gemma and I have a lot to talk about, and we've also got a lot of interesting stuff that we can share with you that you've been doing during the day behind the scenes by anybody who's done the QR code. Now, don't do it anymore just at the moment, right? There'll be another opportunity for you to do it in a moment in this session. But my name is Lesley Howells. I'm a consultant clinical psychologist. I'm the Maggies lead psychologist, and I've been working in cancer now for over 23 years. And here's my admission. I actually live quite near where Faisal came from. So, there was logistically, it wasn't going to work for me. And if I'd catch a lift with Faisal, I would have missed all the brilliant sessions today. And so hopefully, because I've been listening, I've been building up and making sure that I'm weaving things in. I've weaving in your questions, weaving in what Michelle was saying, and obviously the lineup of all the different speakers. So what we did was and Gemma's there, so you've got a visual of Gemma, and so we're going to take you through the whole idea of living with uncertainty, which you guys know way more than the majority of people, and I'm sure you don't wish that you that you arrived at through the experiences that you've got. But COVID has taught everybody that uncertainty is a part of life. That's the only thing that we can be certain of, is that life is uncertain. But human beings have evolved to actually find uncertainty threatening. We've evolved because we can predict, because we can plan, because we can problem solve, because we can troubleshoot, so that we can minimize uncertainty as far as possible. But then if you bring melanoma into the mix, everything goes out the window. Absolutely everything goes out the window. And you have to find another way of being. And that's what we wanted to talk about this afternoon. And I'm kind of really the warm-up act for Gemma, because Gemma is going to talk about extraordinary resources, which I think we would all agree which should be pivotal to our cancer experience. But also, the other thing that I am aware of, and I hesitate to say this, but because I've been working in cancer for the last 23 years, and obviously have been working with people with melanoma in various different ways, I've seen it change. And the irony being that it's changed positively, but the uncertainty hasn't gone away. The horribleness of before all the new treatments was ironically the certainty of death, but now there is the treatment, there's the survivorship, there is the potential for living well and living beyond, but that creates perhaps even more uncertainty, and in the midst of that, grieving about the person that you were whilst you take on this life ahead of you. So all of these things are going to come into the conversation that we're going to have now, and I will make sure that we keep as closely to time as possible. Then we may kind of just meld a little bit in the time space we've got, just purely so that we're fluid and we're responding to whatever's happening in the room. So I'm going to share my slides now. Okay, just a second. And if there's ever a problem with anything in terms of people being able to see or hear or anything like that, you're going to have to find a way in which you can flag it to me. I'm sure Kev, who's on IT, will be helpful. So as I say, I've come in from Maggie's, and this is what we want to talk with you about today. The idea of being the person that matters to you whilst living with uncertainty. But first of all, what I'd like to do is actually to arrive and to pause. And one of the things that all of us know, is that we can't choose what happens to us in life. The only choice that we have is how we respond to it. And that is hard work. It is a tricky job being human in any shape or form. But again, if you throw a melanoma diagnosis into the midst of that, It's hard work having to choose all the time how to respond to all that's thrown at you, all the things that have been talked about, lymphodemas, anxiety, the idea of the graphs that you've been seeing today. It must have been hard work watching. But although we can't choose what happens to us, we can choose to respond. And that's at the heart of living with uncertainty, and all the different psychological approaches, in actual fact, to how we take on these kinds of challenges. And I want to just kind of take a moment now to do what a grounding technique that many of you probably already know. I know that the kids are taught about it in school as well, but it's worth remembering. And always, I'm going to be talking about things which are simple by design, because whenever you're feeling overwhelmed, you don't need a complex psychotherapy. You need something simple by design, just to let your mind settle so that you can choose how to respond to the situation rather than react. So what I'm going to ask you to do is very, very simple. I want you to just take a moment to look for 5 things that you can see in the room around you. Just 5 things. Like for me, it's fireplace, dog, lamp, me, and you. Right, so I've seen 5 things. Then 4 things that you can hear. So I can hear my dog. I can hear, what else can I hear? I can hear my feet. I can't hear that many, but 4 things you can hear and really listen to it, really the subtlety of it. 3 things that you can smell. 3 things that you can smell. I've got some new perfume, so I can smell that, but you can probably still smell the coffee or and the cake. 2 things that you can touch, and that includes not just being able to touch yourself, but touching and feeling the heat or the cold around you. Like my feet are freezing, but I'm quite cozy up here, right? And then 1 thing you can taste, and that could be anything. It could be the coffee, the cake, the tea, whatever you've just had. And in doing that, right, you have engaged with your senses. And one thing that's fundamental to the human body is if you engage with your senses fully as possible, then you move away from your mind. And your mind can be positively toxic at times. It can really, really send you into all sorts of catastrophic places. And some of the information that you guys have had to kind of endure has been catastrophic. But it's a way of actually managing it, that when you want to be able to think these things through and when you don't. And as I say, those 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a way of actually just coming back into your body, into your senses, and away from this melee in your head. Okay. So what we're going to do now is I'll just move us on and be, again, mindful of time. One of the things that we all do as human beings is we piece together this elaborate jigsaw of our lives. We choose our career, we choose our education, or we find ourselves in our career or education, but we make well of it, or we marry, or we have children, or we don't, or we are invested in our leisure, or we're invested in hobbies or whatever, but we build this elaborate picture of ourselves painstakingly over the year of who we are, the person that by and large we prefer to be. We may not like some of the pieces in our jigsaw, but it's there, it's us. And then cancer and melanoma just comes underneath that jigsaw and just throws it up in the air. It just goes whoosh in the air, and that is something that is hard for any human being to tolerate. All of what they thought they were has just gone up in the air, and it feels in pieces, right? And you know this, but you also know, and I know, that some of these, and you'll have observed it, and you'll have known from speaking to others who've gone through similar stories, and that other things that you've had to go through life where you've had no choice, is that human beings do adjust. We do adjust to change. We do adjust to those pieces going up in the air. But we go through emotions alongside that. And these emotions are actually natural. They're a natural way in which we adapt to change. We grieve what was and what we're now having to take on. And we find a way, not necessarily of acceptance, but a willingness to be with reality as it is. Okay? And the important thing is not to get trapped in one or the other for too long. So, for example, trapped in anger, or trapped in despair, or trapped in terror, or trapped in shock. but also to not go whoosh straight into the future and before your time or before you're ready, or not letting everybody else kind of take you into the future before you're ready, but also testing out new perspective, testing out a way, can I be with this life as it is? Can I grow through what's going on for me? And I say that very, very gently, because it can be horrible to have somebody say, oh, well, what with every opportunity there comes, no, with every change there's opportunity. And yeah, but that's fine if you've invited it, but not if you're in the midst of it and you've just been thrown in. But often, even though these emotions are natural, we get swept away by them. We get caught up into habitual patterns of unhelpful thinking, overwhelming emotions, tricky body sensations, and we can ricochet all over the place. And one of the things which we'll be drawing out in response to the question that I asked you earlier on is just what ricochets around in our heads. And I just want to, this isn't the one you came up with, but it's just to give you a little glimpse of, I was very privileged to be chairing a session at the Melanoma Focus Conference last May, and I asked the clinicians, the family members in the room, the people with diagnosis who were at that session as well, what are the key concerns for somebody living with and beyond? And this was stage 4 diagnosis. And this is what came up, right? So very much the idea of what are the concerns: family, recurrence, quality of life, survival, finances, uncertainty. And I asked a similar question of you this morning, and we've taken pockets of it. So I've got a snapshot of what you were saying this morning, and then we'll do it again and build on it this afternoon, and build on some of the responses that some of you have already done in the coffee break. So why is uncertainty difficult for human beings to tolerate? Well, basically, we have evolved effectively because our brains are good at shaping ourselves for survival, right? We have evolved as a species because we can predict, plan, problem solve. As I say, we can work out where the threat is and avoid it. We know where the saber-toothed tiger is, we avoid it. We know where the berry patch is, we don't remember to go for it. So we have automatic strategies in our body physiology, which detects threat or detects so that we can minimise the risk of threat. And also we have anticipation machines, which are really, really good. Our brain is an anticipation machine until you're going through scan after scan after scan, and it doesn't seem to turn off. It's anticipating the worst. But we have this ability to predict and not knowing, right? Not knowing is something that we are primed to dislike, okay? And also there is growing evidence that even babies, right, anybody who's brought up a child, they do not like uncertainty. They like to know when something is going to happen and that it will happen on that time and the person that's going to do it. So what I wanted to do is move on here, right? So people sometimes, and this is really horrible to actually be witnessing, is a way that people will say, oh, well, life is not certain, right? And such a statement can be deeply patronising when you have had a melanoma diagnosis. However, there's still stuff that you can take from that idea that life is uncertain, right? So bear with me on this. I don't wish to be patronising. I'm wishing to just let's pause and think, what can we take from this? Okay, so nobody knows anything that can be 100% about anything. And some people, ironically, are okay with uncertainty, but others find it deeply unpleasant, particularly if you've been thrown into that situation. And as I said, that human beings try to control and avoid unwanted experiences, right? And that people who find it difficult to tolerate uncertainty often get into this worry cycle about what lies ahead. What if? Many of the people that I work with who have melanoma or other cancers will say the what if monster. I hate the what if monster. It's plaguing me. It plagues me at 3 a.m, right? But actually, some of this worry actually increases uncertainty. And that's what we're going to talk about again, and how we can move away from that. So one of the things that what I want to flag up is the way that in many cases we create barriers to being the person we want to be, because we try to avoid new situations and stick to rigid habits. We don't make plans. What's the point of planning a holiday, if we can't go on it? We've had that many cancelled. So ironically, the intended consequence are there, but the unintended's there. And so we avoid even more. And likewise, worrying ahead, the intended consequence is there. We try and preempt possibility, but the unintended consequence is there. We feel less confident, more worried, and it goes around in a circle. But if we can get this uncertain, if we can find a way of being with uncertainty, then we can actually experience this concept called post-traumatic growth. And the reason why I give you this bowl, and I am going to go slightly over, I'll give you a heads up now, is that the bowl symbolizes this idea of when we're broken in pieces, when our life has gone up in the air or onto the ground, right? It can feel like, how can I possibly be that person again? Right? But in actual fact, we can find a way in which we can grow and know ourselves in a different way. And this bowl actually is showing a Japanese art called kintsugi. I can never pronounce it correctly, but it's the idea that if you're broken and you have to piece yourself back together again, don't do it with Gorilla Glue or Copytex, do it with gold, right? And so because you have come through something and you are wiser because of it, and you are more skilled, you know what's important because of it, okay? So, but coming through it requires you reaching out to family, reaching out to other people with different similar stories, like Michelle was saying. It may be reaching out to a trusted counsellor. It may be reaching out not just to a trusted counsellor for yourself, but also for your family. And it can ironically, it can be, and this is something which I don't know whether many of you have come across this before, and I don't know whether you can actually see me in but this is what's called a Chinese finger trap. And the idea is that you put your fingers in and you pull away, because that seems like the sensible thing to do, but in actual fact, you just become more trapped. And it's the same with cancer. You want to pull away from being you, right? But ironically, that can often entrap you more. And to actually find a way of balance is to move towards some of the things, open up to discussion, open up to help, and make space for some of the difficult emotions. But one of the things that you can do to help that, right, and these are, again, simple by design, is the idea of noticing and creating signs of safety. And this was something that I picked up from Michelle's talk, which was beautiful, when she was saying, when she's in the midst of anxiety, distraction is the thing, right? And it is. But I would say also it's an incredible skill of moving your attention from where your mind wants to take you in terms of this worry around uncertainty to where you want to place it, right? So mindfully focusing on what matters, okay? But this is a beautiful piece, which I'll stop sharing my screen now and share a different one. This is a beautiful piece, which actually just captures what we mean by the idea of finding safety, right? So what we have here is from Lise Sissette, who, if you don't recognise her face, you'll recognise her voice, talking to Ross Atkins this time last year, okay?
And Lise, just briefly before I let you go, I keep meaning to ask you this, because I'm sure some viewers are wondering, what's the beautiful building behind you that we see every evening?
Oh yes, isn't it beautiful? St. Sophia's, and the bells ring out. And when we used to have another position, Roz, it was St. Michael's Cathedral, absolutely beautiful. And before the invasion, these glittering domes used to be golden, and they lit up the night in this city. But I have to tell you, the bells of St. Michael's still chime on the hour. The bells, a reassuring on-the-clock message across this city that all is not lost, and perhaps someday this country will resume its rhythms and rituals. And every time I hear the bells of St. Michael, it reminds me of another time. And it sends a message right across this country, because across this country, the monasteries that are still standing, the bells they toll for Ukraine.
And the reason why I shared that particular piece from Lisa is that it's an absolute example of noticing and creating signs of safety in this messy, messy world of things which are out of your control. It's how can you notice simple things like the bells, right, which give a deep sense of anchoring, but also how can you create signs of safety? And one of the things like the 5-4-3-2-1 is very simple by design. But just as Michelle was saying, walking out into the beauty, actually going and doing that exercise, I don't wish to patronize, I'm not, but that's creating a sense of safety. Going to a trusted person to talk through, say, for example, a counsellor or a psychologist, creates a signs of safety and a space of safety, but also doing that and arranging that for your children and your partner, again, the signs of safety. So it's where can you move things around? Where can you hold on? And every time I look at that piece, I'm humbled. Okay. But I want to tell you a bit more about those signs of safety and how to find them. And this is, it's, again, I don't wish to minimise the significance of what everybody's going through, because it is a bit, Russ Harris's voice is a bit too light in so many different ways, but he is big in my world, right? He is very big in my world, and he's got a lot to say. And this particular metaphor is something just to reflect upon, and I'll pick up on it after we've moved on, after you've watched it.
Life is like a stage show, and on that stage are all your thoughts and feelings and emotions and memories, and everything that you can see, hear, touch, taste and smell. And this show is changing all the time from moment to moment. And there's a part of you that can step back and watch that show. Zoom in and take in the details, zoom out and take in the big picture. Shine a spotlight on one part of the show to really illuminate what's happening there, or bring up the lights on the whole stage show all at once. And this part of you is what I like to call the observing self, or the noticing self. And no matter what shows up on that stage, no matter how the show changes from moment to moment, this observing self part of you is always there, always available. So let's suppose you're out with a bunch of mates having a lovely meal at one of your favorite restaurants, and to begin with, your attention is all focused on your friends and the food, engaging in the conversation, enjoying the meal. But then, suddenly you hear this loud, annoying voice from a guy at the table behind you, and he's yakking on about something in this loud voice that really gets your goat. Suddenly the spotlight shifts and all your attention is on this guy and what he's saying, and you're so irritated by the sound of his voice and the stuff that he's saying, and you're getting more and more wound up with everything that comes out of his mouth. So what's happened in the meantime, while all your attention is on this guy, your friends and this lovely meal have just faded into darkness. But what happens if you swing that spotlight back onto what matters most to you in this moment? Having a good time with your friends, having a laugh, sharing stories, enjoying the food. So the greater our ability to notice where our spotlight is shining and to redirect it to the part of the stage show that we really want to illuminate, that matters most in this moment, the greater our ability to transform our experience of life.
Okay. So, let's let's have a think how to shine our spotlight on what matters most. Okay, and again, keeping that idea in your mind, it's where we choose to attend. And one of the things that helps us is to pause, to choose how to respond to life aligned with our values. Our values help us choose where to attend, where to focus, and how we can be the person that matters to us the most. Okay, so rather than get swept away by difficult thoughts, emotions, and kind of behaviors and reactions. And one of the things that I'd invite you to do, though there's no time to do it just today, we'd use a whole course or a whole day to do this. If you're coming in to say Maggies or you're a local psychologist or the Big C or whichever is your support, you perhaps take a long time to do this. So what you will have is this slide set, and I will invite you to do this exercise where you identify your values, right? These are the things which we wrap around ourselves. They help us to make decisions in life. They're a bit like a compass, right? It's given, these are my values, given this is my dilemma. What do my values tell me about what to do? Given I need to speak to the kids about where I am at in terms of my treatment, given these are my values where I'm being a parent, what does that tell me about how I'm going to go about it? Okay. And one of the ways that you can do this is by actually identifying times where you've been happiest, most proud, most fulfilled. And what have the values been that have been enabling that for you? And this particular word cloud are some of the values which a particular group of people with advanced melanoma put together for me one time. And just kind of what are the values that underlie who they are and how they want to have as their guide in terms of life. So what we'll go on to now is the idea that once you've done that values, and it sounds so ridiculous, I'm not meaning you have to slow yourself down and say, oh, do this table. But it's the idea, as soon as you identify those core values, it might be for me like kind, honest, courage, adventure, right? And you're met with a decision, even moment by moment decision, right? I'm not suggesting you sit down and do a table, but it's the equivalent of thinking, what's the dilemma? What are my values? What does it tell me in terms of what I might do? Okay. And I'll leave you with that, and perhaps to reflect on maybe even what led you to choose to come to the conference today. I would say you had kindness there, definite honesty, but also the courage to open and to listen, and the adventure of the traffic system. Okay. So what I'm going to do, 3 books which I recommend, and you'll see that I've added one more in because Michelle's statement about if you don't know where to start with the next step, is Facing the Storm. Dr. Ray Owen and Dr. Julie Smith are both clinical psychologists that I really respect. Facing the Storm and Why Has Nobody Ever Told Me This Before? 2 books plus The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse will really bring these things together. So now what I'm going to do is stop sharing, right, and quickly introduce Gemma, let her do her bit, and then we'll pull things together, because Gemma is she's a clinical nurse specialist, a skin cancer specialist. She's also behind many things, including she's part of the Melissa trial at the moment. So what I wanted to do was open the floor to her and let her talk about a service that is absolutely tailored to helping you be the person that matters to you, despite what's going on around in terms of your melanoma. So I'll hand over I'll kind of go mute and stop talking and turn my volume up and hand you over to Gemma now.